Hello, everyone. Today, welcome to the podcast and welcome to Hazardous Area Safety. So today on the podcast, we have Geoff from PILZ. So, Geoff, would you like to introduce yourself?
G'day everyone. Geoff Lobegeier. Been in industry for 30 years. Firstly as an industrial electrician, did my trade, then spent the next sort of 18 or so years as a tradesman managing business in mining, oil and gas. Moved into wholesaling and then went and worked with a couple of the big OEM manufacturers, as in Schneider, NHP, Rockwell, and now ended up at PILZ as a safety consultant.
That's a pretty broad stroke. So let's go back to when Geoff was in high school. What was the driving factor? Because obviously you come from trade perspective.
No, I'll jump in there. No, I actually I'm one of 5 boys.
Yeah.
Come off a 1,000-acre cane farm up near Bundaberg, so in a little remote town called Wallahall. So very much driving tractors, and like I say, being one of 5 boys, did a lot of industry stuff on the farm. So learned how to weld, build things, fix things. Probably one of the things that the old man instilled into me. I won't speak for my other 4 brothers, but is there's no such word as can't. You can always fix something. So then Dad sold the farm luckily in '88. Moved here to Gympie. I did all my high schooling here. Mum wanted one of us boys to go to uni. School for me, I actually liked learning. So I got accepted to go to uni. I deferred for 12 months because I was playing rugby union here on the sunny coast, and was sort of being a big kid, wasn't too bad at it. So deferred from uni, played rugby for the 12 months, picked up a couple of odd jobs, and one of the jobs was a cable stripper. So the copper cable stripper for an electrical contractor here in Gympie for their Christmas party. And the boss then, he said, I'll give you 2 weeks work, strip all that cable. I finished it in 3 days. He said, what am I going to do with you now? And the supervisor back then had me walk into the workshop and he goes, I'll take him out as a TA. Can you weld? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I can weld. So I spent the next 3 months as their trades assistant, so welding all their brackets for cable tray. And then Pat, my boss, called me in the office one day and he said, how would you like an apprenticeship? So, and then 5 years later, he called me into the office again. And whenever you called into Pat's office, you always knew something was pretty serious, And as a 23-year-old, he called me in and he said, Geoff, I want you to be my supervisor and manager because Jonesy, my then boss, has just resigned, And I said, no, I'm too young. Pat. He goes, no, I want you to be my supervisor manager. So then for the next 16 years, I managed 30, 40 guys all around Queensland, So from a young age, I was thrown into a management role. So not only managing people, managed the business as well. And then so I'd still be working with Pat, but he suddenly died in 2012, hence why we'll now segue into the Movember thing. Pat suddenly died of, some men issues, and hence why I devoted a fair bit of my November month to the Movember calls. So left when Pat died. I couldn't work for the business anymore because Pat and I had we had a father-son relationship. I left and I went wholesaling for a couple of years with Sheriff, BGW Group, which that was a really good experience. So they're probably the other side of the industry. But to be a good wholesaler, you need to be a certain person that I'm not. But it is a black art. Being a wholesaler, it's a black art to be a wholesaler. So I spent 2 years there, and I built the business from where it was, and then when I left it in a really good position. And I actually went and worked worked myself, but then a couple of years as a compliance inspector, because I know when I was contracting, I knew here in Queensland, electrical contractors or any trade don't get their work inspected after it's finished. So I actually worked for some high-end clients, looking at their sites and their installs, and doing compliance checks to AS3000, pneumatics, hydraulics, painting, because there was a bit of commercial work in there as well. So I did that for a couple of years, and then, another mate of mine, a young mate who was a domestic spark, he wanted to get into the industrial commercial realm, so I went and helped him out for about 12 months, and then, ended up at NHP, with a mate of mine who's the boss of NHP. He wanted me to come work for him, so I went there for about 2 years, and that's where you and I met, because I was their hazardous area safety technology specialist, and then left there on good terms. Left there and went to Schneider into their mining role, more of a technical role. So I was looking after PNG and sort of Queensland as a sales person, but also because of my technical background, helped them out with some ideas on how to fix things. But Schneider, look, I love the people at Schneider. But Schneider, I think, don't quote me, but I think it's one of the world's largest businesses, and it was just too big for me. It had lost the personal touch. No, I was just SESA 57474 was.
Mm-hmm.
So I found PILZ, or PILZ found me, whichever way you want to look at it. We won't go into that story, but I know in the conversation that I had with Roseanne, our managing director, within the first couple of minutes, she said how that PILZ is still owned by the original granddaughter and grandson of Herman and PILZ. So it's a family-owned business. So once she sort of said that, I knew what PILZ was about, because I've been installing PILZ gear while I was a tradesman. Ended up at PILZ, and now I do risk assessments, validations, design reviews, guarding assessments, and then I'll also deliver training around machinery guarding too. So long story, but like you said, probably a pretty unique sort of character in the industry, where I've covered probably the full breadth of the industry. You know, I've gone from being a tradesman to now delivering safety. It's with everything in between. So
it is like, but before we continue on with the subject or the podcast, it is, for the people that are listening, it is a very beautiful moustache. So thank you. I'm a bit jealous because I can't grow one properly. It's one of my many shortcomings.
It's a good cause though, Travis. And another couple of minutes on that. If I didn't in 2012 go and have it doesn't matter, finger in the bum. That's what the moustache is all about.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't go get my prostate checked,
Mm-hmm.
my prostate was good, but there was other issues. As in, I had to go and have a cautionary colonoscopy.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have that done, I'd have bowel cancer. So they found some polyps in my colon.
Mm-hmm.
That if I didn't have it done at 38, which you're only meant to get it done when you're 50, and that's what Movember is all about. So the boys and the girls out there, it's not just about us boys, it's about the girls too. Go and get your bits checked.
So we'll put a link in the show notes as well if they want to donate to the effort that you're putting in for that. Because obviously, as I said,
it is about donating, because obviously any charitable cause needs money, but it's more about so for me, I've been doing it for 16 years now. It's more about the conversation, you know, have the conversation about stuff, you know, and anyway, we better get down to business.
Let's get to the pointy end. So you covered such a breadth of industry experience. You've worked your way through being an apprentice, being a manager. So during that time, would you be able to pinpoint one of the biggest shifts that you've seen in the industry, particularly around safety?
Yeah, that's probably, like you say, probably an easy one for me to answer there, because because where I've come from and what I know and what I've seen, and I've been the person at 2:00 in the morning, being a sparky, do things that sometimes you need to do that. I'm talking back, 20 years ago. So I guess the shift in the industry is, yes, it's much more focused on safety, and now the responsibility is put back on the owner of the business or the PCBU to take responsibility for what's actually happening on site. Where in the past, there's probably been some, and I'll speak probably openly, and I won't get into too much technical terms, but owners of business or the PCBU could probably hide themselves from litigation or whatever, but now it's very much you are in the firing line if you have unsafe equipment or people are doing unsafe things on your site and you know about them. I mean, the person has got to take their own responsibility for their own safety too. But certainly, like I say, the person in charge is now can be liable. So that's probably the biggest shift I've seen. That, and also too, the young people that are coming through haven't been given the time and the training in their younger year to understand properly what can happen if something goes sideways, or if you do that, what are the repercussions of an action, you know? So, like I say, for me, growing up on the farm, I've seen things, I've done things, and I go, oh, is that what happens when that happens, you know? And then certainly through my trade, I had some really good tradesmen that actually had the time to spend with me. That if I didn't know something, where I find these days people are very time poor because we're all busy doing things, and young people don't get the time spent on them, and that's required. So that's probably the two things, the two big shifts I've seen in the 30 years that I've been in industry. That the people are now liable, and the young people coming through haven't had the time, you know, spent on them to so they can learn properly.
Let's unpack that, because like vicarious liability, that's pretty much a done deal. Like if you're a business operating, if you're operating a business, you have a responsibility, whether you like it or not. You need to ensure that it's not a case of just having a documented SOP. It's about how it's implemented and how it's trained and how it's managed. That, like, that's kind of the nutshell of being a person operating a business, like a person conducting a business or undertaking. But when we talk about one good thing that you've highlighted, particularly around training and the new generations that are coming through, there's so many competing things. Like you've touched on not having control environments where you can run an experiment and you can find what the outcomes are, whether positive or negative. And then the other thing is the time constraints around like getting the job done. It's more about getting the job done, being on budget, you know, getting in, getting out, pressure, build. Our margins are small. You know, if we don't get this job, if we don't win the next job. So the pressures from the like administrative pressures and the financial pressures and the business pressures, that's getting pushed down to the workers.
Absolutely.
So how can you see good businesses kind of put a buffer and an isolator in that so that they can dedicate training to it? Because we often talk about training's important, and then as a business you're like, oh well, I've got to take a guy off site, hold up the job. It's also going to cost me money. You know, they're seeing the upfront cost, but they're not seeing it as a tangible investment into their workforce. So what would you say to a business owner who has that mindset?
I mean, this is a very it's a very loaded and probably a touchy subject for a lot of business owners out there in the world today. And I don't know, are they listening live now, or this gets recorded? And
this gets recorded.
Yeah. I just say,
I can bleep it out.
No. I mean, if there's people listening now, some of them are probably not going to like what I'm about to say, but I mean, I speak the truth. I know for myself, when Pat had the business from the 80s to 2012, maybe I'll say to probably mid 2000s. He had a niche market, like he just focused on industrial electrical work in the manufacturing sector, did a little bit of mining. I see the problem these days, people go into business and they spread themselves across a lot of industry. So that means then the apprentice or the tradesman needs to be skilled across a lot of industry. So to have those skills, you either need to have come on board from somewhere else where you've gained those skills, or the business that you're going into needs to put training into you. And that doesn't happen because the market is so competitive and the margins are so low. Time is not spent on having the correct people in correct positions, or the apprentice who should be getting trained in hazardous area, let's say, is up on the cable tray tying cables, because that's what needs to be done. That's the biggest thing I see. And like say, working at PILZ, I'm a little bit unique at PILZ where I'm in Queensland, and because I have old kids and I'm a grandfather now, I get to travel a whole lot. So I go all around Australia, across manufacturing sites, some mining sites. PILZ doesn't get into mining, but I still go to mining sites because I have a lot of people and contacts in those areas, sugar mills, and I see it. Like I walk around with my eyes open, that you can just see that how people are set up on site, or contractors are set up on site these days. It's get in, get out, get it finished, let's get to the next job, And what that, and I've seen it. It's probably been the last, the 10 or 12 years that I've actually been out of contracting. You can see how different businesses operate now, where the poor old apprentice, who was going to be the tradesman in, 10 years time, he's not going to then have the skills to then train the next apprentice coming through, So, that's the biggest issue again, Travis, is because the customer wants something. The customer wants $100 job for $10. That's probably the underlying issue, because the market is so competitive. Businesses have to be competitive, and they have to be, time conscious of, we've allowed 10 hours for that job. We can't afford to train someone for 4 hours on that job, So that is a vicious circle. I mean, governments talk about it, that Australia has a trade shortage.
It's not. The funny thing is, it's not classified as a trade shortage, because I don't agree that we have a trade shortage. They call it a skill shortage. I agree that we have a skill shortage, because I look at even when I was in the regulatory space, the amount of tradespeople that were like missing an MEE. Like, that's like, you don't understand how an electrical system works. If you're missing an MEN, you are going to kill someone.
That's fundamental, isn't it?
It's a fundamental. It's the fundamental basics of our fault path.
Yeah.
So is that a trade shortage? No. Is it a skill shortage? Yes, because that tradesperson, he has not been trained effectively, or the pressures of him performing the work overshadowed his requirement to do his mandatory testing.
But the problem that probably goes to, because I know, like, showing my age here now, in 91 or 92, when I was a first year apprentice, I was the first year to trial self-paced modules. So
assessments,
well, no, even the course, you got given all the, and I was actually only going through a cardboard box the other day, and I found that, so you got given folders of information, and you work through that yourself, which was fine for me, because, like I say, I'd done straight math science at school, and it was good. But there was guys, this is, like I said, back in 91, 92, there was guys in the class, and there was no teacher. The teacher was left the room. You were just left there to your own devices. So we trialed it for that year, and I'm pretty sure it didn't continue on. But I know now there's a lot of online training that happens. So you don't have the Geoff Lobegeier who has the experience of X, Y, Z, that when you're training a young person, that young person can ask you questions, from your experience. Look, I don't care who you are. I'm 51 years old. I've been around a fair bit, or not so much experience. 9 times out of 10 will trump a textbook person.
So there's two things. There's two things that have changed. Oh, not so much changed. There's one back in just before COVID hit. There were RTOs out there because your trade is a certificate 3.
Yeah.
Like technically, there were, and the certificate 3 requires you, from an RTO's perspective, to do a series of courses. So there's a framework around how the courses are delivered. What companies were doing, they were trying to promote a loophole back in like 2017, 2018. And this occurred when I was a regulator for the DOJ. So you know how you've also got like national recognition. So the license holder, if they get issued a license in any other state or territory, they can go to any other state or territory and it can be issued. So what happened is these RTOs were promoting that you can get an apprenticeship in 2 years because they will provide you with 1 year to do your certificate 3 coursework. And then after the fact, you just need 12 months practical experience in AS 3000. So regulators in their licensing department were getting hit by all these people that have done the certificate 3, trying to get their license produced in that state. Like, so Mr. XYZ would do the course in like through an RTO in Sydney or Victoria or whomever, and then they would just scatter their license application form to every single regulatory office, trying to hope that one of them would say yes.
Well, I reckon I may have, in my 2.5 years that I've been at PILZ, because I still hold my electrical license. So it's probably something I've brought to PILZ. PILZ now does AS 3000, AS 61439 compliance checks, which is really good for the CE mark, like equipment coming in from overseas, Europe or Asia or wherever, to go and check it out. But most of the equipment coming in from those countries is okay, but some of it's bad. But probably some of the worst I've seen is installations that have been done by, I reckon, these people that have done their 2-year apprenticeship, because earthing isn't right. One of the worst things I've seen is like they've broken gauge in a J box. Come from a 32 amp type D circuit breaker in 10 mil full core and earth, go to a Clipsal 56 series J box and broken gauge down to like 1.5 mil.
What's wrong with that? That's terrible.
Well, obviously that's, I looked at that.
Just melts. It just like, as soon as it has any form of inrush current, the cable would just puff.
That really can. I hadn't actually heard that. That actually really concerns me that there is electrical, plumbing. Yes, electrical is probably the trade that the medium can kill you. But I mean, any trade what you deal with can kill you. But it really concerns me that there is like RTOs people that would even think that doing your trade or getting knowledge in 2 years and then let someone out. And that's that'd be the thing too. They get their license. They then can go and get their contractor's ticket, start a business. They're up and running.
Yep. So when this occurred, so you're looking at that 2-year time frame, right? But it's only really 1 year. You've only done 1 year. You might have done all your schooling. You might understand it theoretically, but with these particular RTOs, what was found was within, like, you could also get the answers you could pay for the answers online as well. So they had like these backdoor chat sessions that were happening that you could go and do it.
Yeah.
It was all self-paced assessment online, but then there was someone had like got the questions, populated them so that you had that ability to cheat through it. That's wrong. Like that is, so that's when like more scrutiny came around, like capstones at particular years. So your capstone assessment, year 1, year 2, year 3, and your final year exam. And also like the introduction of a more scrutiny towards your profiling. Like, what is your what is your on-job exposure to relevant experience, whether it's general electrical installation, what are you doing with that? So, your skill set, kind of, you might understand the practical, you might understand the theoretical portion of it, but at the same token, you don't want someone who's been like installing cable tray for 2 years.
Sorry, I was actually just looking for because I know I had it here. I was actually looking for my logbook from what I did. Like, we had actually handwrite like a diary.
Yeah.
And I've got a diary that's got, I don't know, probably 300 or 400 pages that I've actually had to handwrite what I actually did every day of my apprenticeship.
So one of the things that you spoke about as well is, and this gets thrown out all the time with RTOs, and I need to be honest. I'm not bashing RTOs here, because like RTOs are given to get RTO, there's a work package that you apply for, and then that gives you your RTO status, and there's a list of like course packages that the RTO can deliver. I'm not knocking that. I think the reputable ones do a great job. I think it's all relevant, everything like that. This isn't it. But when we talk about competency, every person believes that, like, if I have a certificate, I'm competent. This might be a loaded question. What are your thoughts on that one?
Again, I've probably got to be careful.
You don't have to be careful.
Oh yeah, no. And I guess it goes back probably, I'll say maybe back 20 years, maybe 15 years, when I'll go to the civil. I'll go to where. Actually, I'll go back further. For me to get my forklift ticket, which I've still got my forklift ticket now, and my elevated work platform ticket, I had to sit an exam. Sit in a course for half a day, sit an exam, and then do a half hour or an hour test on the forklift or on the elevated work platform. And I don't get. I just got to reapply each year. And I keep my license. So that's in itself, that's a bit of an issue too, because do I use a forklift or an elevated work platform anymore? No, but I still license. But now let's park that. At least I know myself. I'm a pretty good forklift driver, and I know how to use an elevated work platform. So I then jumped to the civil industry, where I don't know the exact year, but I'll say 15 years ago, you didn't have to sit an exam. Someone didn't have to come and check what you did. All you had to do was get your supervisor to sign a declaration to say you're competent, and you got your license. So the competency thing for me, let's just say probably just park that and say I don't agree with it at all. I believe it's certainly for high risk work, or working with machinery or mediums that can cause you injury, as in electrical, plumbing, civil work, that there needs to be some sort of course taken, and then physical, practical tests taken on an excavator or a forklift, because Even I've got 3 brothers in the mining industry, Barn Basin, work for the big guys, and they're the same. Like, they have people that come to site, apply for jobs, and they're competent on, bulldozers, excavators, whatever. They get them on site. They said they wouldn't even get them to bloody drive their push bike. So, let's just park the competence.
I'm just trying to get it. Just give me a second.
And it also, I mean, and I'll go back to the electrical trade, which I think is really good, but it can be circumnavigated because I've seen it happen. But for me to renew my electrical license every 5 years here in Queensland, I've got to show a current CPR certificate, and I've got to do the online MEN assessment test, which, I mean, yes, okay, anybody can do that for you, but I know for myself, I actually like to do it because it actually refreshes, your training around the MEN. Because I know, like I say, I had probably one or two tradesmen back in the day that I mean, Betsy and I wired this house. I was an apprentice. He was my tradesman. One of the things that he taught me, of all the conductors, of all the things in the electrical industry, the earth wire is the most important wire. Deal with it first. So terminate it first. Deal with the earth first, and that's, like I say, that stuck with me 31 years later, so I still remember that. And any of the young people that I come across, I was only on site in bloody regional New South Wales yesterday and the day before, and there was a young apprentice on the site, nothing to do with me, but I actually sat down with him for about 10 minutes, and I actually said to him, I said, because he was terminating an isolator, and the first thing I said to him was, see that green, yellow wire? I said, deal with it first. He hadn't been told that by his trade, but yeah, anyway.
Like, I would always tell young apprentices, I'd always say that electricity is lazy, and it wants to find the fastest path to Earth. So whether that's why you make sure that your Earth is done first. It's always priority, because if it doesn't go through Earth, it will go through you, because all it wants to do is get to ground. That's all. Just think of it like that, and we're all happy and satisfied. Yeah. So competency, this is why I like, a lot of people, they say that I get my certificate, I'm competent. Well, I've just brought up AS 3000. So, because that's the framework that we use, and that's our mandatory standard. So it says, clause 1.4.34, it says a person who has acquired through training, qualification, or experience, or a combination of these, the knowledge and skill enabling that person to perform the required task correctly. So you break that down and you go, okay, well, competency isn't a license. Competency isn't a course. Can you perform the task correctly? That's the criteria. That's a measuring stick. You can show me a million different certificates. Doesn't matter. Can you provide me, show me that you've done it correct?
But also too, moving on from the AS 3000, there would be certainly the ESA, Electrical Safety Office, the Act and the regulation would have some further comments around competency and licensing. I'm sure. I don't know. I haven't actually looked into that. And it's been a while since I've. No, it doesn't. Yeah.
No, because the mandatory requirements. So when you've got your code of practice, that the standard of which you will perform work will be AS 3000. And so AS 3000 provides a framework of what is competent. So then you go down into AS 3000 further, and it will define what a shall and a should clause is, what shall is, what should is. And then that provides you with, you look at it and you go, okay, well, did you install it as per the manufacturer's instruction? Because that's a shall requirement in 1.7. No, you didn't. Are you competent? No. Did you reverse polarity something? No. Did you carry out your mandatory tests? No. Okay. Then it's a case, the question is, did you perform that task correctly? No. Are you competent? No. Doesn't matter about your license. Doesn't matter about your course selection. Doesn't matter about the RTO. The evidence is you haven't performed the task correctly. You haven't installed it as per the manufacturer's instructions. By that definition, doesn't matter about your feelings. Facts are you're not competent. So that's how evidence matrices are built out. That's how prosecution and penalty infringement notices are done.
That's an intro, and I guess we'll go down this rabbit hole, and I'll say rabbit hole because we're going to get into legislation. That's one of the big that's one of the big eye openers that I have certainly had here at PILZ, around because I've got into delivering training, and one of the courses I deliver is the basic machinery safety course, and I've been doing that to the Office of Industrial Relations. So me as a Sparky,
yes,
I actually thought AS3000 was our Bible and that we must follow it. You don't have to.
You can deviate from it. Yes,
It's any of the codes of practice standards are all shells. But what I learned from the guys from the Office of Industrial Relations, because they deal with the legislation all the time and they deal with people that are trying to circumnavigate things, the codes of practice will reference standards, but also will reference back up to the regulation and the act, you know. So that was actually a big, like I say, it was a big eye opener for me that Australian standards and certainly the 4024, AS 4024, the machinery safety, which is the ones that I deal with most now, are only guidance, but expert.
So that's why in Australia we live in this is like, we're going to go down the rabbit hole, so let's go. Within Australia, we live in a performance-based scenario. So we live in a performance-based standard framework, not a prescriptive-based standard framework. So as in like what you've said, it's like true. It's easier to tell people that it is the Bible as far as electrical work, but when it comes with a caveat if you're using what's called the Part 2 solution. So the Part 2 solution, if you look at your standard, will say Part 1, Part 2. Part 2 solution is for like, here it is here. You can deviate from that, but you have to, if you deviate from it, and that's why like your particular, say for example, you have a unique parameter that sits outside the framework, or like, and it forces you to deviate from the shower because of an installation method or like a environmental method or whatever the method is. Then you get an engineer to design a system that provides the functional safety and the performance safety aspects that are required within AS3000, and you document that as a deviated method.
But it would have to be of a higher standard. And look, and I guess at the end of the day, and this is what I say to even the guys at the Office of Industrial Relations and people on site that I deal with. Okay, if you don't want to follow the standard, you're going to end up and something happens, you're going to end up in court, and the judge is going to say, well, what did you follow? When you say I didn't follow anything, you're going to be in strike. So if you've said you follow the Australian standard, at least you're off on a good foot to start with, you know. So that's probably the big thing that I say to people is, okay, you don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but when something happens, and look, this probably goes back to issues in industry in 2024, that is the problem. Some electrician goes and does an installation, does it on site, leaves site, never to be heard of again because, he probably doesn't even have an ABN or something, they turn up and do the work. And whether it possibly could be good, but if it's bad and something happens, but then that responsibility then falls back on the person that has actually engaged that person, that they should have been checking that, yes, they are an Australian contractor, or, they've got a contractor's ticket or a license. Did that get checked? No.
Well, so say for example, within electrical safety office, like they're called different things around each individual state and territory, but we're talking about technical regulators office. The Act and the regulations will define what they require, what they define as electrical scribe work. It will also define like the performance of that work as well, and will also have the notification responsibilities. So the challenge is if electricians don't know about this, which 90% of them do, we're only talking about like 10%, or like the 10% that don't, and probably 10% that are just bad actors within the industry. How is your local mum and dad who's trying to get things by, trying to get work done? How are they going to know?
Yeah.
Do you think that they're engaging that person in good faith as well? So it's that balance of like, okay, yeah, they should have known. Okay, well, who was supposed to tell them? The service provider. those are the questions that are always kicked around the office, always kicked around. Okay, well, who's responsible for this? Well, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge from that front to be able to educate. And back in the kind of 2010, there was, remember those ads that would go out from WorkSafe where do it yourself down on arrival, and it had the person going up the access. We used to call them manholes, but now we call them access hatches into a ceiling space, and then the lights would flicker. There was a big push for that, but you don't, because of trends towards consumption of media. Those ads are no longer front of mind with people because people probably don't watch that much TV anymore. They're more online or streaming services. So there's been a lot of a drive to understand how to get that information out to general population. What do they do? Put it on the back of a bus. How do they get that message out? Yeah. So that's always a challenge.
But also too, Travis, I mean, getting the message out is one thing, but at the end of the day, it's the back pocket decision.
Mm-hmm.
That's I know. Look, for me, because I used to do well, not all the quoting, but most of the quoting for the business that I was in, and towards the end of my tenure, I certainly saw the competitiveness go through the roof, and I know now here in Gympie, PHE used to be the only industrial contractor in the area, and we were the only ones that worked at certain sites. Now there is 10 or 12 contractors, one-man band, one guy that's just got an Econovan and a ladder on the roof doing work on those sites, so because it all come down to price, so. So it's not only the mum and dad, the domestic arena. It's manufacturing, industry, mining. It's across the whole industry.
With that as well, the challenge that has always been inherent with the electrical trade is being able to assess the value of being able to assess the difference between a good job and a bad job, because at the end of the day, all the client sees is the device. They see the light switch on the wall, they see the light on the ceiling, or they see their production line run. They can't assess whether the quality of the workmanship. So what would you say to that?
Well, it's actually a good point, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, because I come across that, I won't say daily, but when I go to a site to do a validation, so I'm actually validating that so we're talking machinery safety here. So a brand new, and I won't mention any business names here because I probably can't, well, I shouldn't, but brand new site gets installed, state of the art machinery, packaging, does certain things. So it's been risk assessed. It's been, installed and commissioned by the contractor. PILZ then comes along and does a validation on the safety system. So I'm validating that the e-stop will actually stop that conveyor, that access gate will actually isolate or make safe, whatever, that press or that conveyor. It's actually surprising how often I go to a piece of machinery, open up a gate, and the conveyor either keeps going or be started up with the gate open because the system hasn't been installed correctly, and some of the excuses you get, the apprentice did that at the last minute, it's like, mate,
cool. Still not right.
Exactly not right, and you wonder why we're only dealing with a couple of things at the moment where people have done some stupid things and, people have lost fingers. I cannot believe in 2024 in manufacturing in Australia, in the great country that we are, people still lose fingers, break arms on machinery. I won't say man or woman, humans. I mean, both genders work on the line. So male or female, doesn't matter. You can't protect against stupidity. I mean, okay, someone will break an arm or lose a finger because they've done something absolutely stupid. But if someone is working on a piece of equipment in their normal day-to-day life, I cannot believe that people get injured, that it shouldn't happen. Things are in place. There are rules in place. Things should be installed in a certain way that the machinery should be safe. But it's these contractors that have only spent 2 years getting their ticket, win these jobs. They get to a case tucker or a filler and they go, where do I start? And they've got to connect it up and make it work and make it safe. It's scary. It is scary.
So it's only drawn in colours.
Yeah. Apparently.
I've seen that some of the dangers that happen is when you've got contractors who I don't know what their financial status is, but sometimes I've seen that mainly desperation or allurement of more money is a driving factor. So they step out of, and particularly this happens, like they step out of a domestic market and they go and do, light commercial. And the from what I've seen, and anyone's able to correct me if I'm wrong, the appetite becomes more about the allure of financial gain rather than the opportunity to be challenged from a sediment.
So on that subject, this is not a PILZ conversation now. This is when I was working. It's one of the reasons why I ended up working for myself. For that exact reason, where how do I say it? So a certain business in position in industry engaged me to check. So I was working for the client. So the client was getting stuff built, and I was working on their behalf to make sure it was being installed correctly. So what I'd come across was, and I'd heard the rumours but didn't believe it, and not just electrical, but also plumbing, air conditioning, across all trades where, I've got to be politically correct here, specification wasn't followed for financial gain. The client, I mean, I used to go into some sites, again, I was about to say that, harmonic interference was a massive problem on quite a number of these jobs. And what I come across was between the air conditioning contractor and the electrical contractor, they'd cut corners.
There was no load balance.
Well, they hadn't followed the specification. Yes, load balance, but also two, there was no filtering. Like the air conditioners that were specified were X, Y, Z, and they had onboard, filtering on the VF drive or the soft starters, whatever. They didn't, because they brought them in from certain parts of the world that don't have any filtering on them. So all the LED lights back then, they probably don't
flickering.
Now, were all flickering. And it was all for financial gain, So, anyway.
The thing with that is, though, like sometimes you kind of look at other countries. They have like an apprenticeship. They have an apprenticeship program, and then they have like a transitional program. So once you're out of your apprenticeship, you're not immediately called a tradesperson. You go through like a journeyman stage. So there's an extra 2 years after the fact that, you've done your trade, that's your starting point. And then you've got a transitional phase after that. That's when you start learning how to run small projects, or you learn how to, you actually learn it because you're in a more practical environment. We won't have that here in Australia. There's no reason to go.
We don't.
No,
we don't.
And we never will.
I know back towards the end, like going back 2008, 2009, 2010, I actually wanted to get my contractors together. Because Pat was looking at retiring, and someone had to take over someone in the business had to have the contractors. So having back then, nearly 20 years experience in industry, as in working with AS3000, working at maximum demand, putting in the correct cable size, and also running the business. Running the business in it, because there was three of us that ran the business. It was me in Queensland and a couple of guys down New South Wales. But we were turning, 50, 60, $80 million a year. So quite a big business. So I think I have some business idea of how to run a business. For me, I had to go into a 6-month business course and then show 12 months experience. But yet a 4th-year apprentice can finish his apprenticeship on the 30th of June, apply for his contractor's ticket, and gets it. Which it's happened still today, And I actually fought with the ESO back then. They said, no, you need to go and do the 6-month course, and then show experience in AS3000 and maximum demand. It was crazy.
That's to hold the position of the technical manager to be able to have the contracting license given.
Correct.
That's how it was back then.
Sorry. And then if that 4th-year apprentice wanted to do a full-blown contract, yes, he had to go and do the 6-month business course, So,
awesome.
But for him to be the technical manager, he could just apply and get it for him. But yet I had to do a course. And I'm sure it's the same. It's still the same in Queensland to this day. It's yes.
I don't know what it is down here, if it's still hot the same, but you needed 3 entities to run a contracting, electrical contracting business. You needed someone who was an electrical practitioner who had their electrical license. You needed someone who had completed their contracting course, and you need someone to be the technical manager. And the technical manager was like someone that had at least 12 months experience in AS3000 and held a grade license. So if those 3 people can be one and the same, or they can be 3 different individuals, like it's how some companies, their business managers purely administrative and purely business focused driven. That's fine, but you need to have those 3 entities. But I don't know. I left my contracting license a long time ago, so I'm completely out of the loop. But I think like we've kind of unpacked a lot of the challenges, let's say. So where do you see some of the proactive, so from a PILZ perspective, you've mentioned that they're very focused on training. What are some of the takeaways that you hear from students, clients, when you go on site and you're talking to them about, hey, this is what we do at PILZ, this is the training, this is the delivery. What are some of the, let's put a positive spin on things. So what do you see as some of the positive takeaways that are happening about awareness, implementation of that awareness, people's ability to kind of stand up and say, I don't feel safe with this, cannot learn the law?
Well, probably the main reason why I ended up at PILZ, because they were actively searching 2.5 years ago, definitely because of the responsibility fact that businesses have now reached out to. And look, PILZ isn't just the only company in Australia that does what we do. There is a couple of other reputable businesses doing it, and I'm sure they're in the same boat where they are struggling to get people to do what we do, because there's only a few people probably can do what I do and the rest of the team can do here in Australia, because we're competent, apparently. Well, no, I know. There's that confident word again, but I can show I have proof of my competency. But the positive spin, certainly the training. So the training that PILZ deliver, like our basic machinery safety, and then our certified training. So actually get certified by DUV Nord over in Germany. But then as an offshoot of that, which you and I briefly spoke about before coming onto the recording, was I've been delivering here in Queensland there's 100 at the moment Office of Industrial Relations inspectors. So they're the industrial inspectors that go out on site and, look at ladders and make sure your test and tagging's up to date. But then what PILZ has provided to them is some basic machinery safety training around when they go onto a site. Hopefully, most times it's after an incident has happened, but if they're on site, and this is probably the spin that I put on it for them, if they go to a site for, a forklift check or something, have a look at this, check to see if the e-stop has got the yellow background, which they have the power to. Open up the electrical cabinet and just check for a couple of things. And I gave them a couple of pointers of what to look for, and that will trigger that you've probably got an issue with the performance level or the safety system level, So that's probably the positive spin on the industry. I believe industry is moving and certainly needed to shift to a more safe or safer environment for the young people coming through, but also too the older generation too. They need to be working on safe equipment as well. And then I don't know. I don't know where the conversation is going to go. But the next step in the industry is the AI, the smart machines, So
Skynet taking over the world.
What's the term? Sign? Who was the Terminator? What was the
Skynet?
Skynet. Yeah. I thought you did. But yeah, I guess we won't get there yet. But yeah, the guarding and the control system needs to be at a certain, put it in Geoff, as I said in my training to the LYR guys, to put it in Geoffrey terms, if something is going to break your arm or kill you, the safety system and the guarding need to be at a certain level.
Mm.
And if it doesn't meet that level, there's a problem. So, and they actually really appreciated that. I had 15 or 16 male and females over. There was 6 groups. That was probably the main conversation was, if something is going to seriously injure you, the guarding needs to be, of strong construction. As of strong construction, certain height. The gaps need to be right, but then also too, which it's hard for those guys to check, but PILZ will get engaged down the track as the expert opinion, where the control system then needs to be at a certain level, So yeah, so I think the industry is certainly moving in that direction, or they need to.
Well, the reality is the whole push, the whole push for safety, especially when we're talking about machine safety and guarding. You've got highly attuned, highly specific process lines for manufacturing, for whatever formal function it's for. You've got built into all of these devices, you've got integration systems, microprocessors, you've got such complexity around systems. We're not talking about 20 years ago even. We're talking about things that are available now. So if that is critical for your business to operate, and for the people that are on that line is critical for you making $1. For you and I, it's it's not even an equation. It's not even we don't even need to have a conversation about this. But the perception is, I've already paid $100,000. I've already paid $300,000 for this. Shouldn't it already be built in? What would you say to that?
So that is a really big topic at the moment, certainly because there's a lot of equipment coming in from overseas, and not just people automatically think when someone like me says that, oh, he's talking about Asia or China. Absolutely not. Equipment coming in from Europe, and this is the big misconception certainly that I've seen in the last 2.5 years. equipment coming in from Europe that has the CE marking on it, which is, it's actually French back to front, Europe certified, so CE marked, which everything is CE marked. Your TV remote, people would have seen the symbol. But certainly in the industry, people think a machine is up to Australian standards and it's safe because it's got that CE mark on it. Absolutely not, people. You need to understand that the CE mark, yes, look, it's good in Europe, and it's also good here in Australia, but the problem is it's self-certified. What I find at the moment is a lot of our work and the other companies that do what we do as well, we're actually doing CE checks or CE certification that it is to Australian standards. So so the conversation then that I have with business owners, supervisors of the line, because they say, but it's CE marked, it's, it's safe. It's like, no, it's not. Come and have a look at this. I've gone and done CE checks where, you go and look at conductor size. Conductor size isn't right. The conductor color isn't right. Earthing isn't right, because in Europe, I've only just come back from a site, like I say, in regional New South Wales, and they brought in a whole certain type of plant in from a certain part of Europe. It was actually the earthing system was, good in Europe, but no good here in Australia. So the whole earthing system had to be changed.
I got a funny.
People should never assume, but they do.
I got a funny story about the CE mark and about particularly about color coding. So when I was doing my apprenticeship, they were updating the technical college, and they were doing the electrical floor, like a refurb of the electrical floor. So all new machines, all new load centers, all new power correcting units for test purposes. They built all this stuff out from Europe. One of the guys who was in our class, he was the apprentice doing the upgrade of the floor. So he was having a fun time. He'd be working on in the area for 4 days a week, and then for the 5th day a week, instead of going off to technical college, he'd come back to his work site and sit in the classroom. Anyway, they were supposed to have like the opening day when we were halfway through, I think, our 3rd year, the opening day, and then they had to postpone it for like 12 weeks, and we all asked the question of like, what happened? Like, why can't we go in? And they're like, the teacher, one of the team members had like forgot to get the color coordination right and blown up like all classroom experimental load benches, all of them. And so all of us just snap our head and we're like, all right, who was it? So he's like sitting there head down. He's like, it wasn't me. It's like, it wasn't me. He goes like, it was another one of the guys. They just like connected, thought, black was neutral.
Yeah.
Like, no, black was phase.
And that's
like three-phase devices, and they just like power factor correction units, rectifiers, blew, let the smoke out of every single one of them.
Yeah. And that's, and further on from that too, like certainly here in Australia, I saw it. I think it was in you would know, I think the 2003 or maybe the 2007 update to AS3000 fault loop impedance coming in.
The amendment portion of it. Yeah.
Was it early 2000s?
Amendment 2. So it's changed from SAI to AS3000 in 2000. Then there was a 2007 update that happened. There were a couple of amendments that happened in like between 2000 and 2007, but yeah, then 2007 was a major update. Some people like now the fault loop impedance, because it really wasn't really touched on before that stage, and now it's quite commonplace because you can buy you can buy a multifunction tester that will test all of that. Like it will test your, it will test your polarity, it will test your RCD tripping time, it will test like your fault loop impedance measurement. If you know how to drive it correctly, and you can pick a decent one up for like 1,500, like to $2,500. You can pick up a Fluid or Courier too, like, and it's a done deal. But still, being able to understand what that actual result is and how that affects your like site. You talk to people, oh, did you test your fault loop impedance? Yeah, I did. Here's the result. Here. Okay, what's that say? Most people, not most people. Mm-hmm. You just ask them, okay, well, if you don't understand, how's that circuit breaker gonna trip? Like, just a simple thing like, okay, if you don't understand fault loop impedance, tell me how that circuit breaker is gonna trip in a fault condition. Yeah. We'll never trip. Been modified. No. Duty of care. Yes. Duty of care. Yes. That's the best that's the best comment because you've always got the saying garbage in, garbage out. Like I can talk about this. Like there was there was a couple of guys in a particular town in the place that I regulated, and there was four companies, right? Four companies that were giving me a headache. These four companies, I found out that they're all like, it's like family tree. You know, one guy was bad. He'd taught another guy. He'd taught this one guy that was bad. He'd taught three other young guys, and they'd all started their own contracting license. They're all replicating the same problems. Just, but whose problem is it? Is it their problem? No, it's not because they haven't been trained correctly. Is it the guy above them? No, because he hasn't been trained correctly because it's garbage in, garbage out. I think that's a, I think that's a fair cry off. Like, I think if we probably have this podcast in another 30 years, I reckon when we're both sitting in retirement, we'll be going, oh yeah, Geoff, remember when we said, remember that podcast? Well, let's wrap it up. So, in saying that, where can people find you? Hmm. We'll put it all in the show notes below anyway. So if people want to reach out to you directly, we'll put your LinkedIn details there. They can reach out to you on there. Mhm. But at least the other thing is, and that's the reason why I like you. That's the reason why I like you, Geoff. And I think that's the reason why we've got along. Like you're very forthcoming with not like you've always been passionate about people. You've always been passionate about safety. You've always been passionate about people doing the right thing. And instead of like some people who have those passions, eh, they often like you share it. Mm. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. I think those kind of people also eventually ostracize themselves anyway. Like they just have that personality trait around them that, oh yeah, here it comes again. Like just, yeah, whatever, mate, shut up. But look, you don't have, you like, for as long as I've known you, you've always been people focused, always been centered on trying to see everyone's perspective and not only sharing your information, but also learning from others as well, which is an excellent quality trait. And, you know, thank you for taking the time to come and chat, share your knowledge. I really do appreciate it. So thank you. No, thank you. No worries. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to say to the audience before we wrap this up? Beautiful. All right. Thanks for coming on board. I'll talk to you soon. See you, everyone. Bye.